cultural element, and that's something that's close to my heart and Dale's heart, really, because a lot of the work that we do is about building that cultural element. Successful businesses normally have very strong cultural identities, very strong teams who understand both business pressures and goals, but also have a good social element and a good link with each other in terms of the team working elements. And really, it's so important for this, isn't it, in terms of the sustainability side of a business. Unless you get everybody on board, you're never going to tackle the more internal problems. How important do you see the kind of cultural element of this, really, in terms of from our business and others?
Well, do you know, it's really interesting because, first of all, we know we bring about more change, as I say, when it's peer-led. So if it's our friends doing it. So for instance, if I came into your office and I told you all that eating meat was beef is the highest carbon footprint of anything when you calculate it on food, and it's really destructive. So if you want to reduce your carbon footprint, reduce beef. Eyes might glaze over and you might all think, boring, who's she coming and telling us what to eat? If you start eating plant-based food 4 days a week in the office and people realise it doesn't taste that bad, it's not actually that big a hurdle to do that, and then you start talking about the benefits of doing it, that's an entirely different conversation. And the likelihood of other people doing that and even taking it home and trying it at home and telling their friends, and the diaspora of that is much likely to be higher than me coming in and talking as though I'm on some pedestal and telling people what they can and can't do. But somebody within the office starting a green club or a meat-free club, or these sorts of things, they have a real impact. And so when we look at, and so that's one element of it, is that the traction is greater if you are somehow forming a team that wants to do this. Secondly, we need to look at talent acquisition. So depending on the size of the organisation and the reach of the organisation and the longevity that they're looking at in terms of their overheads and their business strategy. So those organisations that definitely see themselves around in 10 years, well, their consumer base, their talent base is going to be Gen Z. And Gen Z are very, very active on these issues. And so starting a company culture that fosters change from within and educates, that's a really important part of it, is to provide that education on what's important and why the company is going carbon neutral, for instance. Educating them is a really important part of the process. So what you want is to say, we're doing this and this is why we're doing it. So they understand, okay, this affects the planet, this affects our children, this affects our lives. We understand that. Still seems a bit distant from us. But if you then have a green team that start to bring up the issues that are important to them, or they're going to cycle to work and they're going to celebrate it, or they're going to do they're going to be given time off and they're going to cycle to Scotland for charity, or these sorts of things that become team building in that old sort of fashioned way as well, but also contributing to the conversations within the office. Then what happens is generally the conversations in meetings are less one person that cares about the environment, but more everyone sort of saying, well, hold on, if we recycle that piece of furniture that we've taken from there, then we could do this and that to it. And it starts to normalize the conversation. So there's the cultural element of the likelihood of adaptation of change happening increases through peers. Then you normalize the conversation, but also what you're doing is you're looking at future talent acquisition and knowing that if you don't change those company cultures to consider the needs of Gen Z and help with the most important issues on Gen Z's mind, then the likelihood of you acquiring talent in the future is going to diminish massively. So you need to start fostering a culture that is caring about the most important conversations of our lifetime, whether we've realized in our silos that we tend to live in that that's important or not. It's very important. So for Gen Z, so I can tell you that when we do these materiality assessments with some organizations that I work with that are bigger, we do two. We do one for current stakeholders and we do a Gen Z one, because we're looking at, okay, so this is where we're at now and how does it affect our stakeholders? And this is our next talent and customer pool. And we know that they have very different thoughts on this. So we do 2 materiality assessments and drive a pathway between the two.
It needs to talk to the future generation, doesn't it? And needs to tell them a story that makes them want, because we won't go into it here, but we've seen a lot of research that sustainability is becoming more and more of an issue when it comes to people wanting to take jobs on. And it's not just Gen Z, it's some of the other generations who are really clued up on it are now saying that we won't take a job where an organization doesn't have at least a sustainability plan, or it's one of their main focuses to be better. They'll go somewhere else, and if that means it being slightly lower on the pay scale, they're willing to take that trade-off because of their beliefs. So you're right, the younger generations that are coming through, they're even more clued up, they're even more connected with that element. And businesses, you're right, will start to lose the best people to, again, their competitors. And